Hello people, I'm not the greatest oral reader out there, but if you'll bear with me or not, it don't matter. But this is a pretty interesting article I found. America before World War III. Who was left to tell the truth? On January 21st, 1951, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black, one of the greatest civil libertarians in the history of his country, warned of the impact of the Cold War anti-communist hysteria on American liberties in a speech to 500 delegates at the conference of the American Jewish Committee. His speech on this day was titled, "Fear Obscures Reason," and in one of his most famous opinions, Justice Black and his colleague William Douglas were the only two Supreme Court justices to dissent in the case of Dennis versus the United States, decided June 4, 1951, in which the court upheld the constitutionality of the Smith Act, making it a crime to advocate the overthrow of the American government. Though Justice Black was defeated in his attempt to protect the rights of the American people against their own government in 1951, on June 17, 1957, in the case titled Yates versus the United States Supreme Court held that the First Amendment did protect radical and reactionary speech unless it posed a clear and present danger. In the Yates versus United States decision, Justice Black further wrote, "Doubtlessly, dictators have to stamp out causes and beliefs which they deem subversive to their evil regimes. But governmental suppression of causes and beliefs seems to me to be the very antithesis of what our Constitution stands for. The choice expressed in the First Amendment in favor of free expression was made against a turbulent background by men such as Jefferson, Madison, and Mason, men who believed that loyalty to the provisions of this amendment was the best way to assure a long life for this new nation and its government. The First Amendment provides the only kind of security system that can preserve a free government, one that leaves the way wide open for people to favor, discuss, advocate, or incite causes and doctrines, however obnoxious and antagonistic such views may be to the rest of us." So vital did Justice Black view the rights afforded to the American citizens by the First Amendment, he realized that without it, the United States would be destroyed by an elite class of corporate and governmental oligarchies whose sole aim was in war profiteering. Justice Black further believed that the American people's sole protection against these warmongers rested with a free press utilizing the First Amendment to its fullest extent in preventing future wars, and stated so in his June 30th, 1971 scathing opinion, striking down the U.S. government's attempt to prosecute the leakers of the Pentagon Papers that revealed the full horrors of the Vietnam War and how the American people were continually being deceived by their own government about this horrific conflict. In the First Amendment, the Founding Fathers gave the free press the protection it must have to fulfill its essential role in our democracy. The press was to serve the governed, not the governors. The government's power to censor the press was abolished, so the press would remain forever free to censor the government. The press was protected so that it could bear the secrets of government and inform the people. Only a free and unrestrained press can effectively expose deception in government. And paramount amongst the responsibilities of a free press is the duty to prevent any part of government from deceiving the people and sending them off to distant lands to die of foreign fevers and foreign shot and shell. In my view, far from deserving condemnation for their courageous reporting, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other newspapers should be commended for serving the purpose that the Founding Fathers saw so clearly in revealing the workings of governments that led to the Vietnam War. The newspaper nobly did precisely that which the founding fathers hoped and trusted they would do. In the 44 years since this monumentous decision by the U.S. Supreme Court that had Justice Black affirming and praising the American mainstream media establishments for their upholding of the highest ideals of their Constitution's First Amendment, Udo Ulfkotte, one of Germany's most highly respected journalists, who was formerly an editor for the German main daily newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine, stunningly and shockingly revealed to the world during a television newscast that the First Amendment in the United States was not only dead, but that the entire U.S. and European Union mainstream media establishments had become warmongering propaganda organizations 100% controlled by the Central Intelligence Agency. And this is his quote. Quote, "I have been a journalist for about 25 years, and I have been educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public. The German and American media tries to bring war to the people in Europe, to bring war to Russia. This is a point of no return, and I'm going to stand up and say it is not right what I have done in the past to manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people not only in Germany, but all over Europe. I am very fearful of a new war in Europe, and I do not like to have this situation again, because war is never coming from itself. There is always people who push for war, and it is not only politicians, it is journalists too. We have betrayed our readers just to push for war. I do not want this anymore. I am fed up with this propaganda. We live in a banana republic, and it's not a democratic country where we have press freedom. The German media, especially my colleagues, day to day write against the Russians. These journalists, who are transatlantic organizations and who are supported by the United States to do so. I became honorary citizen of the state of Oklahoma. Why? Because I write pro-American. I was supported by the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. Why? Because I am pro-American. I am fed up with it. I do not want to do it anymore, and so I have just written a book, not to earn money. No, it will cause a lot of trouble for me. I wrote it instead to give the people in this country, Germany, and Europe, and all over the world, just a glimpse of what goes on behind the closed doors. And in just one example of what goes on behind these closed doors, Ulfkotte related. Sometimes the intelligence agencies, they come to your office and they want you to write an article. I just remember, for example, that the German Foreign Intelligence Agency, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, whatever, it is just a sister organization of the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. See, it was founded by the Intelligence Agency of America, Central Intelligence. Anyway, they came to my office and they wanted me to write an article about Libya and about Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. They gave me all these secret informations and they just wanted me to sign the article with my name. I did that. It was published in the Frankfurter Allgemeine. It was about how he secretly tried to build a poison gas factory. It was a story that was printed worldwide days later, but I had no information on it. The CIA wrote it. Ulfkotte's book, Journalisten, purchased journalists in America, about how the CIA took over and now controls all of the West's mainstream media organizations, is available only in German. as no English-speaking country will allow it to be published, as the consequences it details with are nearly beyond comprehension due to their sheer horror and unimaginable magnitude. Just one example of how horrific our world has now become due to the Western mainstream media press being nothing more than an extension of the CIA, Ulfkotte explains, lies in the fact that NATO defines a battle casualty as when a combatant is killed outright or who dies as a result of wounds or other injuries before reaching a medical treatment facility or help from a fellow soldier. Or in other words, once a U.S. or NATO soldier has been wounded, as long as he or she is physically touched by another soldier, medic, doctor, etc., and then dies, they are not casualties of war. To how effectively this insane NATO propaganda ploy has been for the U.S. and European Union and other Western mainstream media cover-up, Ulfkotte sadly states, can be found in the death statistics of the First Gulf War, August 2nd, 1990 through February 28, 1991, codenamed Operation Desert Shield, that stated that only 148 soldiers were killed, when in fact, by May 2007, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs were forced to release documents showing that the real death toll among American soldiers in this war was over 73,000 souls, a staggering total, proving that more U.S. troops died in this conflict than the entire Vietnam War. And what exactly did these over 73,000 American soldiers die for exactly? Well, according to one of the United States' most respected journalists for the past 50 years, Bill Moyers, they all died for nothing. Moyer explains in his article titled, "The First Iraq War was also sold to the public based on a pack of lies," were among other stunning revelations he reveals. As Scott Peterson, reporter for the Christian Science Monitor in 2002, a key part of the first Bush administration's case was that an Iraq juggernaut was also threatening to roll into Saudi Arabia, citing top-secret satellite images. Pentagon officials estimated in mid-September of 1990 that up to 250,000 Iraqi troops and 1,500 tanks stood on the border, threatening the U.S. oil supplier. The key U.S. oil supplier, excuse me. 250,000 troops with heavy armor amassed on the Saudi border certainly seemed like a clear sign of hostile intent. In announcing that he had deployed troops to the Gulf in August 1990, George Herbert Walker Bush said, "I took this action to assist the Saudi Arabian government in the defense of its homeland." He asked the American people for their support in a decision I have made to stand up for what's right and condemn what's wrong, all in the cause of peace. But one reporter, Jean Heller of the St. Petersburg Times, wasn't satisfied taking the administration's claims at face value. She obtained 2 commercial satellite images of the area taken at the exact same time that the American intelligence supposedly had found Saddam's huge and menacing army and found nothing there but empty desert. She contacted the office of then Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney for evidence, refuting the Times photo or analysis, offering to hold the story if proven wrong. But the official response was, "Trust us." Heller later told the Monitor's Scott Peterson that the Iraqi buildup on the border between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia was a whole justification for Bush sending troops in there, and it just did not exist. Not being content with having needlessly killed over 73,000 U.S. citizens soldiers, in the first Gulf War, barely a decade later, these warmongers lied to the U.S. and European unions into war again in Iraq and Afghanistan. As to how many U.S., European Union, and NATO soldiers have died during the past 12 years in both Iraq and Afghanistan, the Pentagon will not say. But according to the research of Russian historian Boris Borisov, as of December 2014, American population statistics, local death notices, and U.S. Census records 2010 appear to show the number may be as high as 65,000. Historian Borisov, it's important to remember, using the same statistical method, examined the mysterious disappearance of up to 7 million people in the United States during the 1930s Great Depression, concluding these American citizens could only have died starvation, mass execution, in one of the great holocausts of the 20th century, but stated that only when the USA collapsed will we be able to learn many interesting facts about the crimes of the United States government against its own people, including the genocide of the continent's local population. Now, if there is just one point you take away from what you have just read or heard me read, it is this: there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that can be believed in any mainstream media, website, or television broadcast. You name it, nothing. The reason for this is because they all are nothing more than propaganda organs of a cruel and despotic police state intent upon your destruction and mass global genocide through total war. And as for Edward Snowden's leaked documents, proved beyond all doubt from the National Security Agency's own disruption operation playbook, these monsters have not only taken over the entire United States, European mainstream media establishment, but anyone who opposed them, dared to tell the truth, is now targeted for destruction. Just thought I'd share that with you. Thanks.